This is TWiT.
Ostensibly, the reason Apple's doing the SE is it the A18 or the A17 is so it can do Apple Intelligence. They want Apple Intelligence across the board. But do you think people? Sure. I asked this in the Discord, and the resounding answer was no. Do people want Apple Intelligence? I don't want it.
I think eventually.
Eventually they will.
The potential of Apple Intelligence, when it can look at all my emails and I can just ask it for the information from this. Hey, what email was that? There was a point that because I do this with ChatGPT all the time.
Well, that's
I open
the thing.
up
You already have.
Exactly. The whole thing is I already have something, but I open up ChatGPT on my phone all the at least a couple times a day. I open it up and I go and I just push the button and I go, there was this thing that was like this thing. What is that? And it'll just figure out what that was. I was just like, how do I do the thing with the thing? And I'm very like, it's kind of how I spell with Google. I don't know how to spell this word. Here, how do I spell that? And then I put it back in.
That's so 1990s.
Yeah, it was so.
Yeah, they should have a UI for that. That's my big complaint about LLMs is everybody's like, yeah, command line chat interface. Everybody loves it. It's great. And it's like, no. It's been 40 years. No. Build an interface, people. Build a nice interface on that thing.
It's completely peripheral, but I use Perplexity AI like crazy, and they have every model, including now a complete reasoning model based on reinforcement learning. And I just attached it to my action button. I just press it and I start talking. And whoops, I don't know what that's doing. Oh, it wants to see me. And then I just start talking and it starts answering already. And it's just, I think, that's
on my phone,
a good interface. I'm not,
Yeah, exactly. With mine, I'm like with ChatGPT on my phone, I'm typically hitting the talk button and I just sit there and talk back and forth to it.
Right.
And I'm driving, thinking about something, and I just start asking it questions while I'm driving, just like, what about this? And what about this? And how many would this be? And what would this look like? And tell me a little bit more about this or whatever. And I don't feel like I'm missing it. And I said this in the last show. I asked my wife about whether she thought Apple Intelligence was important. She didn't even know it existed. She didn't even know.
Which is amazing.
A huge chunk of people aren't watching ads. I know that Apple does this, but you got to remember that we're subscription based. I don't see any ad. No one in my family sees ads ever. So we don't. So the ad campaigns don't have any impact at this point on us thinking about things. And she's not missing it. My wife uses ChatGPT all day. She's a wizard with it. So it's not that she doesn't care about AI. She just doesn't care about Apple Intelligence. And I don't think that, again, I just don't think that it's that much of a driver. I think that Apple, for investors, had to say, we're doing this thing with intelligence. And I think that there is a huge potential in the future of mixing the fact that it has all this personal biometric, health data, all these other things, that it's combining it with AI.
So far behind though at this point.
No, but the thing is that but nobody else has what Apple could potentially have.
They're not even as good as Stable Diffusion was but 3 years ago.
Again, it doesn't, what I would argue is it doesn't matter right now. Apple has to figure it out and see how people do it, but who cares right now? But 2 years from now, 3 years from now, if it's looking at all my health data and giving me recommendations on how to do that, I'm not going to give my health data to anyone else. Right. I'm not. So the thing is Apple has this lock on privacy, and currently they have a lock on privacy and personal data at a level that nobody else has. They can be behind for Apple Intelligence. At some point they have to catch up, but not for 2 or 3 years. I just don't think it matters.
The latest rumor, I guess, is that it won't be till 18.4 that we're going to start seeing an improved Siri.
But that's not quite. It's worse than that. The latest rumor is that the improved Siri may not make 18.4.
Oh, geez.
And keep in mind that Mark Gurman has also reported that the really improved Siri is being targeted for, let's say, 19.4.
Someday next year.
If it just didn't play
it's hard. Even Amazon can't do it. They were going to put a smarter Amazon Echo together. They had a last minute live or die meeting on Valentine's Day, and they decided, it's not going to make it.
Well, the hard part is that you can run loose and goose with ChatGPT, and if it's wrong, you go, oh, that
doesn't reflect badly on Apple. Yeah, right.
The thing is that I think I was talking about this on the show, but I asked it for a router. I said, here's a 16-port router. I need an what's the 8-port version of this Cisco and the 4-port version? It gave me the 8 port and it was totally accurate. It made up the 4th port. The 4 port one doesn't exist, but it gave me a model. Like it gave me a model, a breakdown of it, the specs, everything else. It just made it up out of thin air. And what I thought with ChatGPT was, that's funny. You're a funny guy. And I'll stick with the 8. But if Apple did it, they'd be, people would be putting it on Twitter, And so I think that the requirements that Amazon or Apple have to reach for their brand makes this way harder when we just understand that AI
just
is
another version of the innovator's dilemma. And isn't that what's stung so many companies is their inability, including Intel now, is their inability to change with the time?
Or just, it's just that there's so many places, I can't remember the exact quote, but, Mark Twain said, it's not the stuff that you don't know that gets you. It's the stuff that you're sure about.
That's wrong.
And I remember, I taught, when I was teaching green screen, Justine Ezra that's how I met her. I was doing a green screen in Pittsburgh, a green screen class in Pittsburgh. And she was, in the class asking all the questions and, everything else. And within months, she was doing green screens that I would have never even attempted. Like she was doing it with like little consumer cameras and handheld and in front of something and, and the keys weren't perfect and everything else, but she didn't, but she was building compelling content. And I looked at it going, no, you can't do it that way. Or that's not the proper way to do it.
Would have reflected poorly on your professionalism. She didn't have to prove anything.
She didn't prove anything, and she just ran with it. But I think that was a lesson for me of like I might want to, experiment more.
I just think that more than that, the stakes are just so much higher. There's a big difference between an app that you can choose on your own to seek out and install on the phone, and an actual fundamental feature that you're promoting on the sides of buses. It really has to be on point, and you never get to. You don't get that first impression twice. So you may as well. And as we've been talking about, we don't have a lot of experience with people who are wondering, gosh, how come my iPhone doesn't have all these AI features that are built into Claude and built into Gemini? So they got time to really ride this out. In the meantime, I'm very, very pleased and impressed that they are saying that we don't want to have a big wall divide between Apple devices that can do Apple Intelligence and Apple devices that can't. This idea about the iPhone SE means that they're committed that every single device that they make is going to be able to do Apple Intelligence. You're not going to be left behind because these phones, they last 4, 5, 6 years. Maybe in 4 years you will be absolutely cut adrift if you feel like you don't have AI features, and at least your phone that you bought 3-4 years ago.
Do you use Gemini on your Android device?
Oh yeah, a lot. It's about 4 or 5 months ago.
AI.
Yeah, and it's very good. It's very conversational.
2.0 just came out. It's very good.
You have to, as with all AI, you have to know what it's going to be good at, what it's not going to be good at. As usual, it's bad at things that have an absolute hard yes or no, right or wrong answer. But it's great for conversations. It's great for research. It's great for solving a problem and actually operating the phone via voice. I guess the best thing I can say about it is that I no longer wish that I had the Google Assistant back, because it took a while for it to actually just be as good as what it replaced, but now it is.
Apple is starting to catch up in things like photo editing tools to Google and Samsung. Are they as good? Well,
not really.
Not really.
Replacing objects is still really much hit or miss. It's early. It's not like they've been pushing this out as a feature for the past 2 or 3 years as Google has. I think and hope that they'll catch up. Interestingly,
do people not care? I mean, does Apple have plenty of time, or are people going to start saying this is it's not up to snuff?
Eventually,
when do people go, hey, Apple,
I think
Model
we don't
T.
know. I think we don't know, because the question is, what will AI become, and will it be that anybody? First off, Apple's platform is strong enough in so many markets that, I mean, you just mentioned, Leo, wiring Perplexity up to your action button, right? Like,
love it.
You can have AI assistants on that platform without it being Apple's own and
I
built
never
into the
use
system
Apple
at a low
Intelligence
level,
ever.
right? And it's okay. So that gives them a little bit of runway.
Right.
I think the other thing is just it's going to take time to see whether this is a thing that is everywhere and dominant, and it could be enough to make people never buy an iPhone again, which is what Apple is trying to fight as a threat. Or whether it turns out that people like some of the features that AI generates, but that nobody in the long run is going to say, I'm going to buy a phone based on what AI is in it. And we don't know. There are scenarios where Apple could get ridiculously behind here, although I would argue again that the existence of third-party competition to Google, first off, because Google is a major AI competitor and they have a phone platform. The other phone platform is Apple's. So even if Apple is a little bit of a laggard, everybody who's a Google AI competitor is going to want access to the iPhone because it's the competition to Google. So I think Apple, there are threats here. I don't think they're existential. It's like if Apple Intelligence doesn't take off in a year, Apple is cooked is silly. But there is a question of what the consumer intent is in the long run, because I'm not sure, as much hype as there is in Silicon Valley about AI, I do not believe that a vast number of phone buyers today or in a year are going to say, I need it for the AI. I just don't, and Apple's tried it too. Apple's tried to sell Apple Intelligence and it hasn't really motivated sales. I think that people are motivated by what it can do for them, but I don't think that the tech industry has really demonstrated enough about what it actually can do for you. Alex does it, but like for regular people to be like, I got to have AI in my phone. And even if we get there, I believe that if Apple isn't all the way there yet, there will have partners who will.
I have 2 or 3 screens dedicated to AI all day, and I do not feel like I need Apple Intelligence. Right? I don't feel like I have, because the other thing is that I'm using Claude for one thing and Midjourney for another and Runway for another, but the thing is that to me, it's like I'm using each specialty based on what I think it's good at or what I'm most comfortable using it for, and I don't know how I would pick one of them anyway. I do think that Apple, Maps was a disaster when they came out, and many other things have been, Apple has put out. They need time. So having people have it and having people interact with it and having Apple get to watch that and throw $1 billion a year into figuring it out 2 years from now, 3 years from now, I think that makes sense for Apple. I don't think that it matters. I think it could take 2 or 3 years and no one would miss it. No one's going to miss. I don't know anybody that I've talked to that said, well, I just wish Apple Intelligence could be, other than when we're talking about on the show, no one talks to me about Apple Intelligence outside of the show.
Yeah. But what's funny is Apple does on its ads like crazy. Yeah, well, I know, but Apple thinks people care.
It's still just a huge opportunity. Remember that Apple's business is all about, for good and for ill, making people stay inside the Apple ecosystem as much as possible. And imagine if they dropped the ball on Apple Photos and everybody was like, oh, you got to get on Google Photos. All the things it can do. Oh, it can do searches. Oh, it gives you all this extra storage. Well, and Apple Photos was just a place where you can back up your photos. So they have a very long runway. They have a lot of time to work this out, but they got to put some points on the board on a consistent basis. They don't want to lose that people's attention.
I've said this before. I think they did drop the ball on Apple Photos, and I'm still using it.
Hey, it's Leo Laporte. If you enjoyed this little snippet of our programming, make sure you check out the full MacBreak Weekly. The link is right down there.